Today is Friday, and it's what? Chof Ches, Mar Cheshvan. Tomorrow is Shabbos Baruch and Kislev, and there's Chodesh is Sunday and Monday. That means to say that Cheshvan this year has 30 days, which makes this a Shana Malaya. This is an Iber Yar, a leap year, which means that it has 13 months. And when Cheshvan and Kislev are both full, it's the maximum number of days. Shin Pei Hei. This year has 385 days. You cannot have a year longer than that. And we're learning a Maamar from Pashas Chodesh, Tavshin Mem Hei, which is 29 years ago, as we do with Hashem's help every Friday. And it's a Maamar about Mochor Chodesh, which means to say that in Tavshin Mem Hei it was the same arrangement as it is now. Rosh Chodesh was Sunday. I don't know if Rosh Chodesh was Sunday and Monday. I didn't look up the calendar, but Rosh Chodesh was certainly Sunday, like it is today. So in the Maamar, the Rebbe said Shabbos, he talks about the Rosh Chodesh. You know this, and I've told this to you many times, that the Rebbe's, in the Rebbe's Maamar, there are so many Rosh Chodesh Maamar, and Erev Rosh Chodesh Maamar. The Rosh Chodesh Maamar are Hashamayim Kisi V'Aretz Deim Raglei, or Ki Kasher Hashamayim Achadoshim V'Aretz Achadoshim. Psukim at the end of Yeshaya. The Maamarim of Erev Rosh Chodesh are B'derech Klal Vayomer Yehonasan and Mochor Chodesh. They must be from the Rebbe a dozen Mochor Chodesh, which is a lot of Maamarim with the same Divrei Maskal. Sometimes the Maamarim are just strictly Rosh Chodesh. In this case, in our Maamar, the Maamar you have in front of you, the Rebbe joins together a discussion about Rosh Chodesh with the Parshas HaShavua. Eile Teildes Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham Heile des Yitzchak. Now, the idea of this Maamar is Mashpia Makabel. What happens in this Maamar, in its discussion of Mashpia Makabel, is written in the box on the right side of the first page. Gimel and Yon. If you could read my handwriting, you're better than me because I can't. In Mashpia Makabel, there are three ideas. Number one, a Mashpia encourages a Makabel to become a Makabel. The Rebbe holds the Mashpia encouraging a Makabel to become a Makabel is Erev Rosh Chodesh. There's no moon. There's no moon at all. The Mashpia is Me'el the Makabel to become a Makabel. The second thing is, when the Mashpia is Me'el the Makabel to become a Makabel, the Makabel becomes a Makabel. But from whom is the Makabel Makabel? From the Mashpia. This is Rosh Chodesh. And Rosh Chodesh is V'nifkadata. You're going to be remembered. The Makabel, the feminine, the Malchus raises itself up and the Mashpia gives. The third Madrega of this Maamar, and that's the part of this Maamar which is unusual, is that in the end, which means when Mashiach comes, the Mashpia arouses the Makabel to become a Makabel, but from whom will the Makabel be Makabel? From herself. You reveal the Chodesh of the Makabel, the source of the Makabel, which is higher than the source of the Mashpia. And although there is a Mashpia arousing the Makabel, but after the Mashpia arouses the Makabel, and after the Mashpia gives to the Makabel, the end is V'nifkadata, which means you are remembered, is an allusion to how the Makabel's source is revealed. That the Makabel is one with the Eibishter, and then the Makabel is not receiving from the Mashpia, but to the contrary, the Makabel is one with the Eibishter, which is the source both of the Mashpia and the Makabel. This is the Maamar, 3 steps. And it's in the words, Mochor Chodesh, V'nifkadata, ki yipoked meshvecha. Yipoked meshvecha means you're going to be missing. V'nifkadata means you're going to be remembered. Which means to say, yipoked meshvecha means the Makabel needs something. And V'nifkadata means the Mashpia is going to give it to her. And in the V'nifkadata that the Mashpia gives, you have these 3 steps. First, it gives an interest in the Makabel to go on to be a Makabel. Then it gives the Makabel something on the basis of its right to be Makabel. And ultimately, what does the Mashpia give the Makabel? Not the Mashpia gives something to the Makabel, the Mashpia brings the Makabel into a state, into a Madrega, into a station where the Makabel is not Makabel from the Mashpia, but the Makabel is Makabel from its own source, which is higher than the Mashpia. This is the whole Maamar. You can go home. It's done. It's all finished. In the Maamar, the Rebbe is going to explain those 3 things juxtaposed against 2 psukim. Vayomer Yehonasan. to David. Yehonasan says to David, Mochor, Chodesh, and Ifkadak Yipoket Meishavecha is going to reflect these three stages in the relation of Shpiyah Makabel. And then the pasuk in the Parsha, Ve'ele Teil des Yitzchak ben Avraham. Avraham Hele des Yitzchak. The Rebbe is going to explain also three things. What are the three things? Ve'ele Teil des Yitzchak ben Avraham. Then Avraham Hele des Yitzchak. And then a second time Yitzchak ben Avraham. The second Yitzchak ben Avraham is higher than the first Avraham Hele des Yitzchak, and even higher than the first Yitzchak ben Avraham. This is the idea that Yitzchak, the Makabel, is Makabel, its own Maila higher than Shedesh HaMashpiyah. This is what's going to happen in the Maamar. Now, one of the things that you encounter when teaching a Maamar like this, once you figure out, you hope, right? Not decide, but figure out what the Maamar is about, how are you going to teach it? And the Maamar is long, I'm not finishing it in one day. And so, if you look inside, I numbered the Maamar, and of course the beginning is never Aleph, the beginning is Ches and Tes. If you go to page Chaf Hey, you will see my Aleph. By Sif Dalet of the Maamar, I placed my Aleph. Okay? Now we're going to start reading Sif Dalet because it's from this point on that the Rebbe says what I just told you. The three stages of the relationship between Mashpiyah and Makabel. Number one, the Mashpiyah arouses an interest in the Makabel altogether. I'm sorry, I'm taking my sweater off. I'll just dry quicker, yeah? The Mashpiyah has to arouse the Makabel to have a B'chal, an interest in being a Makabel for the Mashpiyah. That's number one. Then you should have an interest in reaching out to the Mashpiyah. Then there is, as a result of this, the Mashpiyah gives something to the Makabel. That's the second stage. And the third stage is that the Mashpiyah helps the Makabel discover her source, which is even higher than the Mashpiyah, and then she's not Makabel from the Mashpiyah altogether, she's from Mebish Nalei. These three ideas are found in this pasuk, and they're also found in the pasuk of Eila Tel Yitzchak ben Avram. So we're going to start from here, Sif Dalet, and I'm going to do both together. I'm going to do both troikes at once. In other words, I'm not going to do first Mochor Chodesh and then have Eila Tel Yitzchak. I'm going to do them together. Let's begin. Dalet. Yuvan Zal Pi Abur Ba'adrushim Hashayches De Vayomer La Yehonasan Amidas Yehonasan David Mochor Chodesh. I'm on page Chaf Hey, middle paragraph, second line. We want to analyze this episode. We all know the story. Shaul wants to kill David. David is not yet sure about it. Who's protecting David from Shaul? Shaul HaMelech's crown prince, Shaul HaMelech's own son, Yehonasan, who loved David HaMelech and Avas Nefesh. It's the greatest love two people can have. In Kabbalah and Chassidus, Yehonasan and David is Mashpiyah and Makabel. Yehonasan is Mashpiyah. Yehonasan is the letters Yud, Kei, Vav, Nasan. And David is Makabel in Abitl. So Yehonasan is the Mashpiyah and David is the Makabel. In the story, they're discussing saving David HaMelech's life. But in Kabbalah and Chassidus, it's a discussion about what happens in the relationship between a Mashpiyah and a Makabel. And this is the process. The process is, first, obviously, the Mashpiyah is higher than the Makabel and is giving the Makabel. Save call safe. Not only does the Mashpiyah get from the Makabel, does the Makabel get from the Mashpiyah, and does the Makabel go beyond what the Mashpiyah has to give, the Makabel discovers her own source at David Higdil, and the Makabel is higher than the Mashpiyah, which is why David Melech is Ochai Makayim, and not Yosef. So it says, on this pasuk, it says, Ki inyan Chodesh, the idea of Rosh Chodesh, Hu Hamshachas Eir Chodesh Me'Hashemesh Ba'alvon. A new light is coming from the sun to the moon. Sun and moon is Mashpiyah Makabel. V'yedua, everybody knows that Shemesh v'Yerech b'Shosham him Zohar Malchus. The sun and the moon is Zohar Malchus Mashpiyah Makabel. So Yehonasan is talking to David. There's a perfectly logical idea within the parameters of mysticism. The Mashpiyah is Mashpiyah to the Makabel. What's the problem? Okay, let's read 5 lines into the page. Pedic, Zehu Hashayich is the Mochor Chodesh. That's the connection between the idea of Mochor. Tomorrow is this Chodesh. To Vayomer La Yehonasan, Yehonasan is speaking to David. Ki David Bechinas Malchus is Lavan. David HaMelech is the moon, the Makabel. Like it says, David U'akot. Okay, next line. Yehonasan Uzah Bechinas Shemesh Avaya. Yehonasan is the Mashpiyah. In other words, Shemam Shechol Mashpiyah Malchus. The masculine aspect, Yud Kei Vav Nasan, is Mashpiyah to David. The Zehu She Yehonasan Hu Yud Kei Vav Nasan. I underline the words. Yehonasan is the Eibishter's name, Nasan. The only thing that's missing in Yud Kei Vav is what? The second Hey. The second Hey is Shetach HaMakabel. That's David. So Yehonasan is all the Giluyim, so to speak, and David is the Makabel. Nesinas v'ashpos b'chinas Yud Kei Vav l'malchus. Yud Kei Vav is giving malchus. V'zehu ha'kesher de Vayomer leYehonasan. Yehonasan is speaking to David HaMelech. Skip the parenthesis. Im Mochor Chodesh, that the next is going to be Rosh Chodesh. In Chodesh hu hamshocha mizol l'malchus. Rosh Chodesh is a new giving from the Mashpia to the Makabel. So the day before Rosh Chodesh, Yehonasan is anticipating what's going to happen on the morrow, that Yehonasan is going to give David HaMelech a new Ashpah. Tomorrow I'm going to renew you. Let's say touch the words. Now comes the Rebbe's observation. And this observation is the first Chiddush in the Maamar. So what is the sun giving the moon? The sun is giving the moon light, right? No. The sun is first giving the moon an interest in light. After the sun gives the moon interest, then it actually gives the light. That's the first stage and the second stage. If we analyze what we just discussed, on Rosh Chodesh, the sun is giving the moon, it should say Yehonasan is giving David. But that's not the case, right? Next line. The day before Rosh Chodesh, when there is zero light in front of the moon, Yehonasan says to David, tomorrow I'm going to renew you. The question is, why is the sun saying to the moon, tomorrow I'm going to renew you? Let tomorrow be tomorrow. Why is this Yehonasan, which is the sun, the Mashpia, saying to David, who's the moon, the Makabel, the day before, tomorrow I'm going to be Mashpia to you? What does today have to do with tomorrow? It's a Pashat Kasha, but it's not a Kasha that Hasidus often asks. But here the Rebbe answers. Mashma, it's implicit. When you say Yehonasan Mashpia to David, it's not only his Mashpia light, but something much more basic. Shayach gam laha'inyin di yipakir. The idea that David is going to bittle himself. The idea that the Makabel is going to bittle himself. The idea that Malchus is going to have an interest in being a Makabel from the Mashpia, that koyach comes from the Mashpia itself. But Yehonasan Mochor. David says, Yehonasan says to David, tomorrow I want to be a Mashpia to you, but I cannot be a Mashpia to you tomorrow unless you'll be bittled to me today. In order there should be in the epoch that David HaMelech Malchus the Makabel should have bittul, which will be the basis for a hashpah from the Mashpia to Makabel. Has to come from above. For the Mashpia to give the Makabel has to be bottled to the Mashpia. Where does the Makabel get its bittul from? And the answer is from the Mashpia himself. So Yehonasan is not only giving light from Zoh to Malchus, Yehonasan is arousing in Malchus' interest in receiving light from Zoh. So the hashpah from the sun and the moon doesn't begin Rosh Chodesh. It begins Erev Rosh Chodesh. The Mashpia says to the Makabel, Erev Rosh Chodesh, Mochor Chodesh. Tomorrow I want to be a Mashpia, but I cannot be a Mashpia tomorrow when Yossi Paltiel himself today. So the sun is me'ated in the Malchus this bittul. That's the Chiddush. Yehonasan, bottom of page Chof. Hey, 4 or 5 lines from the bottom of the page. Mochor Chodesh. Why is the Mashpia saying to the Makabel, tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh? Yesh Leima. Yehonasan speaks to David HaMelech and he says, tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. Because what Yehonasan is doing is Amshochas and Asinas Keach. The Mashpia is providing a power of Zolim Malchus al Ha'inyan the Yipakeh. In other words, the Mashpia is not only giving the Makabel, the Mashpia is giving the Makabel the bittul that the Makabel is going to need to be able to receive from the Mashpia. In other words, you have a teacher and a student. Everybody knows that in a teacher-student relationship, one of the key components is what we call in the culture Yesod. Against the Kedesh Tezvah. What's made Yesod? A bond. With some teachers you bind, with some teachers you don't bind. And it's not intellectual, it's psychological. With the teacher that you bind, you learn from. With a teacher that you don't bind, you can be the best teacher, you can be the best student that just doesn't go. There's a glue. It's a ingredient that's impossible to pin down, but it's a fact. It's called Yesod. But you say there's 2 parts. The Makabel is opening himself up to receive, and the Mashpia is giving. Says the Maamar, the Yesod, mitzad the Makabel, also comes from Mashpia. The idea that the student should be open to receive from this teacher is the influence of the teacher as well. So it's not that the sun is Mashpia to the moon Rosh Chodesh. No. The sun is Mashpia to the moon Erev Rosh Chodesh. There's no sun. There's no light on the moon. What is the sun saying to the moon? Mochor Chodesh. Tomorrow you're going to be new. So I want to be made in you today a bittul. You should be my makabel to my belt to be mashpia. Those are two ideas. You get the two ideas? First of all, the mashpia creates in the makabel the interest to be a makabel, the bittul of erev eshchedesh. Second of all, the mashpia gives the makabel light on the eshchedesh, which the makabel is receiving from the mashpia. But then there's a third, and the third we'll see later. So now turn to page Chavov. Now we're changing the subject, not completely, but to a degree. The same ideas we just learned, we're learning again, but on the pasuk Eile tel des Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham held this Yitzchak. And the Rebbe is going to explain Yitzchak ben Avraham and Avraham held this Yitzchak is Erev Chedesh and Yesh Chedesh. Yitzchak ben Avraham means Bittul, the son of Hisaydus. Bittul, the son of Mashpia. Avraham held this Yitzchak means since Yitzchak Bittul received from Avraham a preparedness to be receiving. Avraham is now being mashpia into Yitzchak Agila. Those are the same two ideas that we just did on the pasuk of Yehonasan. And remember, we're going to have a third. Yes, you have the same two ideas, and then Emetz Hashem will also have a third on the pasuk of Eila Tel Yitzchak ben Avraham. Let's see. Yesh lekasher zeh. Top of page Chavav Sif Hey. Everybody knows the question. Those are the same words twice. It's Shalom Aleichem and Aleichem Shalom. A good talk, like this one. How many times Avraham, Yitzchak ben Avraham is the same thing as Avraham held as Yitzchak? Why say it twice? Rashi already asks this kasha, Yomo, Rashi's tenets about Klaster Ponim and so forth and so on. But Apipnim is on you. Why did the Torah say twice Yitzchak is the son of Avraham and Avraham gave birth to Yitzchak? And the teretz is 3 lines into the page. V'habir, but the teretz is the Avraham who amshacham ul malamat. Avraham's inyan is to bring into the world. Yitzchak is Allah ul mata ul malamat. Yitzchak's idea is to raise up. Says the Rebbe, V'hinei halom il mata ul malamat. You should know that when you raise up, it's magas lemokoim naila yisir. It will eventually reach a higher level. Mehamokim shemisham hu hamshach alamat. It will be higher than the place which the gift was given. In other words, a mashpia, a person arouses somebody else to connect himself to the Meibishter. The person doing the connecting will go higher than the one who aroused him. This is later you'll see the full significance of this. But a mashpia, a Rav is me'eder a Talmud, Avraham is me'eder Yitzchak, Yehonasan is me'eder David. But when David comes back, he's actually going to exceed the inspiration that came from his teacher. Says the Rebbe, Valderach Shomer Azal, we all know this from the Chazal, which is brought in Rashi and Bashas Tazriya, Ish Mazriya Tchila Yeledes Nekeva, that when a man is Mazriya first, the offspring is weak. Isha Mazraz Tchila Yeledes Zacha, but if the woman is Mazraz Tchila, the offspring is strong. Man and woman are the Eibush and Yidden. When the Eibush does all the work, the product is weak. When Yidden do the work, since we did the work, the product is strong. So the Rebbe says that when the Makabel responds to the status of the Mashpia, not simply in a reacting way, but that he takes it on himself, he will exceed what the Mashpia gave. Ella, for those who lost the place, there's a vertical line in your text, 8 lines into the page, that it may be true that in the relationship between a giver and a receiver, a Mashpia and a Makabel, the sun and the moon, Zohar and Malchus, Yehonasan and David, Avraham and Yitzchak, the Makabel, the David, the moon, the Yitzchak is going to reach higher in his ascent than the Mashpia gives him. Nevertheless, first of all, someone has to arouse you. The Mashpia moves the Makabel. And only then is the Makabel able to rise. There are 2 aspects in it. Number 1, one will not be able to raise himself to the Eibush if someone inspires him. Right? Like we say in Chassidus. The koyach ein sof, the power of procreation, is by women, not by men. But you need something to be ma'oder the koyach ein sof. Similarly, the power of connecting to the Eibush is in the Makabel, but you need something to arouse it. So first of all, the Mashpia is arousing the possibility of the Makabel raising itself up. And then it says, Vigam, I'm going to the base that I made in your text. Hakeach, the power, sheyeshnei b'ha'alam milmata alamal, that exists in the Makabel's ascent. Lahagia l'mokim naila meyei, to reach this very, very high level. Skip 1 line. Hu ha'yedei amshacha milmayla lamata shelifnei ha'alah. Also has to do with the Mashpia. The Mashpia arouses in the Makabel an interest. And then the mashpia is also responsible for the great heights the makabel is going to be able to reach. Two ideas are these. These are the two ideas. The two ideas are, in Chassidus we learn that the deepest koyach is called koyach HaHelam. In hiddenness you have the Yetzim. There's a lot of different aspects to this, but this is the basic idea. The deepest koyach is in the hiddenness. The deepest koyach is in the koyach HaHelam. So there's two things that need to happen here. Number one, you want to get the koyach HaHelam to be started up, to be moved. And number two, you want that this koyach HaHelam, once it's started up, should become revealed. In other words, you should see the effect of it. The sun is mashpia to the moon, both of those things. Avraham is mashpia to Yitzchak, both of those things. First of all, Avraham is mashpia to Yitzchak, an interest in raising up, this is the very etzem of Yitzchak, and then that this halah of Yitzchak should be exposed. Next paragraph, V'zehu, now we explain the pasuk. The pasuk says, Yitzchak ben Avraham, Yitzchak is the son of Avraham, then it says Avraham hailed as Yitzchak. It says the Rebbe as follows, Yitzchak ben Avraham, when you say Yitzchak is the son of Avraham, which means Yitzchak only wakes up because of Avraham. The interest of a makabel, to be a makabel, depends on Yitzchak. Depends on Avraham giving birth to Yitzchak. But then it says, Avraham hailed as Yitzchak. Avraham gives birth to Yitzchak means, this is an effect. What does it mean? It gives power of procreation to Yitzchak. The power for the makabel to go higher than the mashpia also comes from the mashpia. The two ideas that the Rebbe is saying, basically, and I'm using the word basically, even though I hate the word basically, because I am only saying it basically, are the first and second steps that I mentioned in my introduction. I explained to you, you have a mashpia and a makabel. The mashpia's role is to affect the makabel. Number one, the makabel should be interested. Number two, once the makabel should be interested, the mashpia should give her something. The number three is that the makabel should discover her source and not need the mashpia anymore. Those are the three ideas, right? This is basically the Rebbe's intent. In the relationship between Avraham and Yitzchak, there's two things. Avraham gives Yitzchak a koyach to be a makabel. It's like Eile tells us Yitzchak ben Avraham. Yitzchak's identity as a makabel needs an Avraham. In other words, the Eibishter created a very deep koyach. It's hidden in Yitzchak. That deep koyach hidden in Yitzchak is only functional because of Avraham arousing. It's number one. Number two, Avraham hailed this Yitzchak. Once Yitzchak is moved to be a makabel, Avraham helps Yitzchak in the Kabbalah itself. In other words, Avraham gives Yitzchak a gilui, and as the Maamar is suggesting, it's possible that when Yitzchak is makabel, he's going higher than Avraham. But this is no longer arousing an interest in Yitzchak, it's actually giving Yitzchak. So in simple words, Yitzchak ben Avraham means to make Yitzchak interested in being makabel. Avraham held this Yitzchak means actually being mashpia to Avraham. And the same is true. Vayomer Yehonasan Mochor Chodesh. Yehonasan tells David tomorrow is Reish Chodesh. What is Yehonasan doing in telling David tomorrow is Reish Chodesh? Be prepared for bittul. That's number one. Then when the next day comes, v'nifkadata ki yipoket meishavecha, because on Erev Reish Chodesh, David was moved to be battle on Reish Chodesh. Zah is mashpia in Malchus, no matter how high Malchus goes. In other words, in Sif Hey, the Rebbe gave us the first two concepts of Hashpah in the relation to Mashpia and Makabel about the introduction. Now, this is a simplification. There's a lot more written into these words that I'm sharing with you. But if I go any deeper, I will not only confuse you, I will confuse myself, which is a bad idea. So let's move to Sivva, and let's, so to speak, realize what we just did. Step one, the mashpia makes the makabel into a makabel. Step two, once the makabel is a makabel, the mashpia is mashpia into the makabel. This is Yitzchak ben Avraham is Yitzchak. This is Mochor Chodesh. Tomorrow is Reish Chodesh, and then the day of Reish Chodesh itself. But now the Rebbe says, let's add the third dimension. In Siv Vav, the Rebbe adds level number 3. V'hine. B'hamayla da'ala milmata l'mayla. We have a relationship between a mashpia and a makabel. The mashpia is giving, the makabel is receiving. And we explained that in the mashpia giving and the makabel receiving, which means number one is to make him into a makabel b'chalal, which have an interest. Number two, once he's a makabel, to give him. Says the Rebbe, in this number two, where the makabel is getting from the mashpia, not the first step, where the makabel is actually becoming a makabel. In the idea that Avraham is ma'orer, in the idea that Avraham is giving Yitzchak hashpah, in the idea that the sun is giving the moon light, there's also two ideas. And these two ideas are going to become 2 and 3 in the scheme of the 3 that we're discussing. Aleph, I wrote on the margin Aleph, I'm on page Chaf Zayin, the first full paragraph, second line. That once the makabel is a makabel, he brings down an incredibly high madrega. He brings down a very, very high level of light, and the Rebbe discusses in some detail how high the level of light is. But then you have Beis. Beis is 4 lines before the end of that paragraph. You see it inside? Beis. V'ha'mayla d'halo atzmo. The simple fact that the makabel is going up. The first idea that the makabel is going up to get. The second idea is the makabel is going up to be up. Those are 2 concepts. And the Rebbe says, Shehinai lo yesir gam me'amshochat Allah. The idea that the makabel goes up to stay up is a higher madrega than the makabel going up to receive this incredibly great light. And he says, Kivavor ba'adrushim, it's explained in Chassidus, this is called Oyer Choizer, and this idea that the Gemara says, that when Mashiach comes, we're all going to call Yitzchak our father. So in the idea that a makabel receives, there's 2 ideas. Number 1, the makabel goes up to bring down light. Number 2, the makabel goes up to be up. Now let me give you an example. Why am I giving you this example? This example is Bamir of Lung. You understand? This is an example I've given you many times before, and I think it's in the Rebbe's Teda, in Teda B'chalal, but the way the Rebbe of course develops it, it's an important idea to appreciate. The Rebbe has many, and it's in Chassidus in a lot of places, Maamorim, Sichas, and so on, where the Rebbe asks a kasha. We have Taryag mitzvahs. By one mitzvah, it says Nachas Ruach. When you do the mitzvah, you're given the Eibush on Nachas Ruach. Which mitzvah is that? Karbonis. Reach nichech la'avaya zog the Gemara. Rashi brings it in Chumash. Nachas Ruach lafonei shamarti v'nasat seini. I said, and you listened, I get nachas. So the Rebbe has even a Rashi Sikha on it, in the Kuta Sikhas, but you also have it in the Maamar Chassidus. And when you keep Shabbos, it's not Nachas Ruach Lafonei Shamarti V'Nasat Etzeni. And when you put on film, it's not Nachas Ruach Shamarti V'Nasat Etzeni. When you, any mitzvah you want to hop on, why Epis Karbonis? And the Rebbe has a moidendik hezbit, very geschmack and nice hezbit. And the Nekuda of the Rebbe hezbit, and like I said, I don't think it's the Rebbe's original. I think it's really the tradition. When a person gives a carbon, the point of a carbon is sacrifice. Period. It's sacrifice for the sake of sacrifice. There's no return. Yiddishkeit is designed in Halon and Mochor. Everything about Judaism is motion. Everything about life is motion. Everything about creation is motion. The motion means up and down, hither and thither. Halon and Mochor. Yitzchak and Avraham. Avraham arouses Yitzchak to raise himself. Yitzchak raises himself, and Avraham gives him back. It is an interplay. In one mitzvah, the only thing you're doing is shamarti. God said, and you listen. What are you getting? Nothing. Shamarti v'nasasani. I spoke. I gave you a mitzvah. You're doing the mitzvah I gave you. What are you getting for it? 0. So the Rebbe says in this sikha, why is it that specifically and exclusively by karbonos we say nachas ruach shamarti v'nasat etzeni, because there's a quality to karbonos which exists in no other mitzvah. Every mitzvah has a reward. Karbonos have no reward. Every mitzvah gets you something, an inspiration, a feeling, an arousal, a movement, a direction. Karbonos, sacrifice. It's different. And that's the difference between the second Yitzchak and the third Yitzchak. Our Maamar gives us 3 ideas. Idea number 1 is the makabel, the mashpia makes the makabel into a makabel altogether. He comes to the makabel and says, Hezachai, Mochor, Chodesh. Tomorrow I want to give you something, today be bottled. The second step is the Mashpia gives something to the Makabel. So the Makabel goes up, you bittel yourself to the Eibishter, you offer yourself to Hashem, you present yourself to the Eibishter, and the Eibishter fills your keli with blessing. But then there's a third Madrega. What's the third Madrega? You present yourself to the Eibishter, you offer yourself to the Eibishter, and that's it. And that's the third idea. So if I can show it to you again. Look on the first full paragraph, page Chav Zayin. Let's read it both times. Aleph. The first idea is Sha'ala milmata l'mayla. The mashpia is going up, and meireres u'mamsheches mimokom nayla yesed. It brings down something even greater, right? So the makabel is being raised up to the mashpia, but the result of this is that the mashpia is giving back, and maybe the mashpia is giving very exalted and lofty things, but it's an exchange of mashpia and makabel. But then you have Beis. Beis is 4 lines from the end of the paragraph. There's Hamayla, the Hala, Atzma. Stop. The Makabel goes up, and that's the end of the story. That's the third Madreg. So in the words, let's read the words. Yehonasan, Yehonasan, Mochor, Chodesh. V'nifkadata ki yipaked mishvach. V'nifkadata means I am going to give you something. Ki yipaked mishvach means because you are going to be bottled. Right? In these words, I'm going to give you something. Mashpia says to Makabel, I'm going to give you something. Because you're going to be bottled. There's 3 ideas. There's the Erev Resh Chodesh idea, there's the Resh Chodesh idea, and there's the Liyosef Lavi idea. Erev Resh Chodesh is making him into a Makabel, Resh Chodesh is giving him Ashpa, and Liyosef Lavi, he's going up and staying up. And the Rebbe says the same is true in the Pasuk. Eile Teilus Yitzchak ben Avraham. Avraham held this is the drei Zach. First of all, Yitzchak ben Avraham. Avraham made Yitzchak into a Makabel. That's Erev Resh Chodesh. Then there is Avraham held this Yitzchak. Avraham gives Ashpon to Yitzchak. This is Resh Chodesh. But there's a La'asid Lavi. You know what the La'asid Lavi is? A second time Yitzchak ben Avraham. Next paragraph, please. V'yeshleimar the Shnei Yon Yodem Shachim Dalazeh. These 2 ideas are connected. I'm not explaining this. You're welcome to do it at home. I don't want to give us more information that we can digest. But look at the next line. Ella. Now, that means before Mashiach comes. In the world we live in today, we can't just give ourselves to the Eibishter and remain hanging up there. We need to bring it back. Says the Rebbe, Hamayla da Allah, he shahamshacha al shal yada, he hamshacha mas yesef. Nowadays we can do the second level. The second level, he biddles of the Eibishter and he brings something back. Ula asid love it is gale, Hamayla da Allah atzma. The third step is really connected to the asid love. Says the Rebbe, Vapiza yeshlem. When you read the pasuk, Eile held this Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham held this Yitzchak, you have to read it 3 times, not twice. How does it work? First was a Yitzchak ben Avraham means what? Yitzchak ben Avraham means Avraham makes Yitzchak into a Makabel. Otherwise he's hidden and he's never going to know it. Then Avraham held this Yitzchak. Once Yitzchak has been made into a Makabel, Avraham is mashpia into Yitzchak. But then there's a third idea. What's the third idea? It says the Rebbe. The Inyan Yitzchak ben Avraham. That the Yitzchak being the son of Avraham is Naila Yesir, is higher, Meha Inyan, the Avraham, Heya this Yitzchak. And so the way you're reading this is, you're reading, Eila tell this Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham held this Yitzchak, tell this Yitzchak ben Avraham. The first one is Erev Resh Chodesh, the second one is Resh Chodesh, and the third one is Liyosef Lavi. And the Rebbe explains, the Inyan Heila this Yitzchak, the idea that Avraham reveals Yitzchak means, Hamshach as Keich Hayladav Yitzchak, bringing a power of procreation into Yitzchak, which means Take, all the miles that he says before, but I want you to read 4 lines from the bottom. Milas hahamshacha shayedei hahalo. Avraham arouses Yitzchak to reach up to the Eibishter, to bring down from the Eibishter. Avraham was arousing Yitzchak to reach to God, so God should fill his cup. Says the Rebbe, but there's a third idea. And the third idea is V'inyan Yitzchak ben Avraham. There is the Yitzchak ben Avraham, which is after the Avraham hailed this Yitzchak, is Mailas Halo Atzma. Is the idea that Yitzchak, because he's the son of Avraham, goes up to the Eibishter and stays up there. V'zehu, which is why in the word Yitzchak ben Avraham, it says Yitzchak before Avraham, because Yitzchak is higher than Avraham. And in the words Avraham held this Yitzchak, Avraham held Avraham first, Avraham is higher than Yitzchak. Turn the page. So before we continue, we have three ideas. We're clear, yeah? Three ideas. The first idea is Avraham B'chlal Me'titzak HaMakabel. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means that in the deepest darkness you have the greatest truth. But what use is there if in the deepest darkness you have the greatest truth and you never discover it? So Avraham Hail says, Avraham comes to the deepest darkness. Let me tell you what you are. Want God. That's step one. That's called Mochor Chodesh. Tomorrow is a Chodesh. Once Avraham teaches the deepest darkness is one God, it wants, and when darkness wants, it really wants, then you have a second idea. Avraham is mashpia into Yitzchak. This is Rish Chodesh. And the third idea is that the deepest darkness shows its source, which is Liyasid Lo. Al derech zeh siv zayin now, everything I just said says the Heilige Rebbe. In Yehonasan and David Zoh Malchus. In the relationship between Yehonasan and David. And forgive me for my repetition. 3 stages. Stage number 1 is Vayomer la Yehonasan Mochor Chodesh. Yehonasan, the Mashpia says to Makabel, tomorrow is Chodesh. Tomorrow I want to give you something, but I cannot give it to you until you open yourself up to it. So the Rebbe is going to teach. Level 1. V'nifkadata, I'm arousing you now. Ki pocket meishavecha, so that you should have bittul. That tomorrow I should be able to give you. I'll say it a second time. The Mashpia says to Makabel, tomorrow I'm going to renew you. And because tomorrow I'm going to renew you, you need to wake up today and be interested in receiving. V'nifkadata, so I am arousing you now. To your pocket that you should have a bittul tomorrow. That's reading 1. What's reading 2? The next day comes, it's Rish Chodesh. David HaMelech was already woken up. How? Because of yesterday. So David HaMelech reaches for Yehonasan, and Yehonasan will give a very generous hashpah. Val derech zeh beYehonasan v'David Zoh Malchus. Achshav, now how is it? Zoh is Lamayla Malchus. The Mashpia is higher than the Makabel. Zoh is Mashpia b'Malchus, which is why Iker HaMayla Hibamshachas Hazoh. The most important thing is what the Mashpia gives. V'nifkadata, you're going to be remembered. The Eibishter remembers his creation. He remembers those beings that are in a state of Keach HaHelam. Ki yipoket meishavecha, because the Makabel has bittul. Ki yipoket is because you have bittul. V'nifkadata, the Eibishter remembers you. But the emphasis is on v'nifkadata. The Eibishter is giving and you're taking. V'hamayla the yipoket meishavecha, and the whole point of the bittul is not for the bittul sake alone. Skip the parenthesis. But Shaydei Zeh Nasim V'Kadata, to get. The Mashpia, the Makabel has to be bottled for the Mashpia to give, but the key is that the Mashpia is giving. That's the second read. Yehonasan says to David HaMelech, V'nifkadata, I'm going to give you a hashpah, ki yipogin meishavecha, because you have a bit. But then you get Ula Asid Lave, the middle of the paragraph, please, beginning of the line, the Roman numeral 2. On page Chavches, Tizgale Bechinas Amachas Meshir Tzadatzma. Mashiach comes, what happens is the Makabel, who originally was in such a state of darkness that needed a Mashpia to tell them they should have an interest in it. And then the Makabel needed a Mashpia for the Mashpia to fill the Makabel with Lichtigkeit. Now you reveal the Chodesh of the Makabel herself, which is higher than the Mashpia in the first place. Says the Rebbe, Shetikabel me'erin tzav atzmei. Malchus, the Makabel, the feminine, receives from the Eibishter directly, without the intervention, without the intermediacy of the Son, of the Mashpia. And on 2 levels. The first level is Kimeza, the Makabel is going to be on the same Aderega of Zah. At the end of that line, Shalavona Toyin Me'atzma K'mei HaShemesh, the moon will have the same kind of light as the sun has. But then it says something else. V'yeseidim izeh, moreover, ultimately you reveal how the Makabel source is higher even than the source of Zoh, which is the idea of Eishes Chayil. So first, the Makabel and the Mashpia become equal. Then the Makabel exceeds the Mashpia. In other words, when the Koyach HaHelam, when the power of darkness finds the God within itself that's deeper than any kind of light. And this is what you have in Haftarah. What happens in Haftarah? This is very powerful. We're going to take tomorrow Parshat and Shul Haftarah, yeah? Yehonasan and David have a meeting. It's a big discussion. At the end of the Haftarah, they hug and kiss and say goodbye. They're never going to see each other again in this world. And they hug each other, and they kiss each other, and they cry. Ad ki David higdil. Until David higdil. What does the word higdil mean? So the Mefarshim interpret higdil means he stopped. He stopped. He was sick. He stopped crying. Now higdil does not mean to stop.
No.
Higdil means he became great.
Right.
So in context means he was able to want to gather himself and stop his emotion. They say stop crying. Yeah? Says Chassidus, no, Aki David Higdil, David became greater than Yehonasan. The whole time, Yehonasan is the Mashpia and David is the Makabel. Aki David Higdil and Asad Lavi, the Makabel becomes greater than Mashpia, because in the darkness you have the highest in you. When you reveal the godness of the darkness, the godliness of the darkness exceeds the godliness of the light. Aki David Higdil, higher than the Mashpia. And that's the third level. So let's focus on these words for a moment. V'nifkadata, I'm going to remember you. Ki yipoket, because you're going to be missing. In Chassidish language, v'nifkadata, I'm going to give you a hashpah. Ki yipoket, because you're going to have bittul. Those 4 words have to be read now 3 times. V'nifkadata, I'm going to wake you up. Ki yipoket, that you should be bottled. That's all. Reading 2, v'nifkadata, I'm going to give you a great hashpah. Ki yipoket, because you will already be bottled. And the third title is v'nifkadata, you're going to reveal your own light. Ki yipoket, because you will have reached the highest madrega of bittul, and you don't need a mashpia altogether. So 3 readings in the same word, and they never hold the same is true. Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham hailed as Yitzchak, Yitzchak ben Avraham. Sif ches, please. Sif ches, please. V'hinei, zesh shemesh v'reich uzomachas. We have mashpia makabel, sun and the moon, zohar machas, masculine and feminine. In the 3 stages that we developed in this maamar, it's k'mesh shemesh v'reich hein binyan asfiris. This is how it is in Sfiris. Says the Rabbi Valamaylam is that you know what's higher than Sfiris? Shemesh v'reich. Hey makadosh baruch hu v'Yisrael, the Eibishter and Yidden. Now this gets very tricky. When you're talking about sun and moon, mashpia makabel, Yehonasan and David, Avraham and Yitzchak, it's all nice. When you're talking about Yidden and the Eibishter, and you're going to say David Higdil, what does that mean? Yidden are higher than? Sure. Finish the sentence, yeah? It's not so comfortable. Aminut. We explained in the Maamorim 4 lines from the bottom of page Chodesh. The Yipoket meishavecha hu. What does it mean my space is empty? What does it mean I'm missing? Ha-bittel the Yisrael, the Yiddish ha-bittel. Because the Yiddish bottle there is an arousal, there's a gift from the Eibishter. Shakadosh Baruch Hu niskek vayochal aleim. The Eibishter remembers Yiddish because of their bittul upeikadesam, and he connects to them. So you have 3 ideas. Idea number 1, you create in the darkness a bittul altogether. Idea number 2, once the makabel is bottle, you mashpia. But then you have idea number 3, you reveal the Chodesh HaMakabel, which is higher than Mashpia. Now how do you explain that about Yidden and the Eibishter? So the Rebbe's words are chosen very carefully. 2 lines from the bottom of page Chav Ches. Just like in the earlier discussions, the Makabel is aroused by the Mashpia, ultimately to exceed the Mashpia, and ultimately not to need the Mashpia altogether. In the 3rd stage, in the Asad Lavi stage, you're revealing the source of the Makabel, that she doesn't need a Mashpia altogether. In other words, Sheina Tzricha L'Kabel Mizah Shemesh, doesn't need a sun altogether. V'yaseidim is a moreover, Shaydei Zeti Aliyas HaMachas L'Mayla Mizah, goes higher than Zah. Top of page, Chav Tes. Now, Zog the Rebbe al derech zeu b'negeya liyipoket meishavecha di Yisrael. We're talking about the relationship between Yidden and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's 3 stages. Number 1, the Eibush has to trigger in us that we should know we're Jewish. Number 2, we have to want the Eibush, then the Eibush gives us a mahashpah. And number 3, you reveal the Mailat Neshamas Yisrael, says the Rebbe Shaydei HaBittel, the Yisrael, Yiddish HaBittel. So first of all, because the Yiddish HaBittel, the Eibush gives you oil. That's now. Correct? Erev Rosh Chodesh, the Eibush gives you bittel. Rosh Chodesh, the Eibush gives you oil because they've already achieved bittel. What's Liasad Lari? Bittel. Period. There's no return. Just bittel, like I gave you the dogma from Karbonis, remember? It says the Rebbe Sheyisro v'Kuchabicha Kol Echad. There's a revelation, not how Yidna Makabel from the Eibishter, how Yidna one with the Eibishter. Shalachein in Emtzrichem Lekabel Kvayochel Lekabel Me'akadosh Baruch Hu. Jews no longer need to take from the Eibishter. Why? Shareihem Chad Mamish. But the Rebbe is not finished. V'yeseda mizeh, moreover, the kivan shalamase yodecha tichse. The Eibishter favors Maaseh Yadayim. In other words, it's the Eibishter and what the Eibishter does. And it says in Pasuk, which means it's emes lapitera, that you like what you do almost more than you like yourself. Kum ta'is. Hare Yisrael he mashpiyim koyachal b'kadosh baruch hu. Yidden are giving something to the Eibishter. Now wait. What are they giving to the Eibishter? They can't give anything to the Eibishter. The Eibishter is everything. But they're giving to the Eibishter the idea of Maaseh Yadecha. The Eibishter create, right? Use our nigel dikadugna. Talmidei Chachamim, Mamoinam Chavav Alev Yetziluf. Talmidei Chachamim value their wealth more than they value their bodies. It's a Maamar Chazal. It's a very strange Maamar Chazal. It's very hard to explain. Whatever the pshat is, your possessions have you in it. You own a house, you're in the house. You own a piece of bread, you're in the piece of bread. The Talmid Chacham values the piece of bread more than he values the him, which is in the piece of bread. Why? Because he was created by the Eibishter. The piece of bread he created. The Eibishter created Yidden. So in Yidden, you have the Eibishter on a level of Maaseh Yadayim. Tvayachal, the Eibishter created something which is going to express who he is. So it's not higher than the Eibishter, but it's precious by the Eibishter. And because it's precious by the Eibishter, it's Tvayachal, an idea of Yidden being mashpi in the Eibishter. Let's read those words again. The kivan shalamase yadecha tichse. If the Eibishter desires more than himself what he's done, kumtais hare Yisrael mashpiyim koyachal b'kadosh baruch hu. How are Yid mashpiyim the Eibishter? Not that they're higher than the Eibishter, but that they're one with the Eibishter in a way of Maaseh Yadayim. How something made itself one with the Eibishter. Eishes chayil ateres bayil. I'm stopping right here. And whenever we have the next chance, it won't be Sunday. Midzen, when it'll be, we'll do the rest of the Maamar, and you'll see. This is very interesting. We'll do the beginning and end of the Maamar. It's going to be a different Maamar. It's going to be a different Maamar. The discussion at the beginning and end of the Maamar, it's connected. But in other words, if someone shows up to the second class, he's really not going to miss the first class because it's a good anandarini. The other part is easier than this. But it's a different dekud that the Rebbe is going to bring out. A good Yom Sheni B'Shabbos is Monday. It's Aleph Kislev. Reish Chodesh Kislev. The first day of the month of Kislev. The Rebbe calls this the Chasidish Chodesh, the Chodesh Hagiyula. I forgot to mention yesterday that it's the third of the winter months, right? The number 3 goes on Shalom, peace. 2 opposites and the third that unifies. And specifically, the number 3 goes on Teda. Teda is the idea of Shalom, peace. It brings together heaven and earth and so forth. So in the summer, you have the third of the winter months. This is Matan Teda, of Nigla de Teda. The third of the summer months is this Nigla de Teda. The third of the winter months is the Teda of Tshuva, because that's what the winter represents, Tshuva. And that's really what Chasidus is. It's brought down the name of Chasidim. I recently had to research this. So when I run out of, I look and I don't find it, I tap into my human resource who gives me back this information like this as a younger man who just knows everything of the Arum from Chassidus. I thought it's a Sikh. It's not. It's brought from Chassidim that the Alter Rebbe said. It's brought from Chassidim that the Alter Rebbe said that he would have given Chassidim the name Baalei Tshuva. He didn't give the name Baalei Tshuva because he didn't want to reflect negatively on the non-Chassidim. Because Chassidus is the idea of Tshuva. What does Tshuva mean? To do Tshuva, you don't have to do an Aveda. Tshuva is the idea of going beyond your limits, like it says in Tanya, in Perek Tezvav, and in Perek Lamed. In any case, Kislev is the Chassidish Chodesh. It's connected to Pnimiyas HaTorah. It's the Torah of Tshuva, and so on and so forth. In Tafshin Nun Beis, the Rebbe spoke that Kislev is Case Floy. The 2 letters Case represent concealment, concealed behalten, and the 2 letters Loy, Lamed Vav, represents Gilui. And the idea of Kislev is that what is hidden is revealed. That's the Nikud that the Rebbe brought out. In Shul Shabbos, you told me about Labat Shabbat. What's mean case? Leiv. That's a good for in Keshener. It's a good for in Hatzen. Kiss means the pocket, and Leiv means the heart. It's good for this Tevla Shemayim and Tevla Brias. Regashmi says a very nice pshatel from my younger man told me in Shul. There should be case loy. The pocket should be full, and the heart should be warm and alive, and doing what it needs to do to bring life to the whole person and to the whole world. Now, we are learning a Maamar. I started this Maamar on Friday, and I suppose I could say I learned the harder part on Friday, or to say it differently, Today is going to be easy because of Friday. Friday we learned Sif Dalet, Hey, Vav, and Zayin, which means we learned most of the Maamar. What's left for today is the beginning and the end. The first page Chav Gimel Sif Ches. This is where we're starting. Now, the theme of the Maamar, there's a lot of details, but the theme of the Maamar is 3 words. V'nifkadata ki yipokit. V'nifkadata means you're going to be remembered because you're going to be absent. And of course, you know how Hasidus develops this idea. It's the same Chodesh, the very same 3 letters, Pei, Kuv, Dalet, that connotes 2 opposite ideas. One is zikoring, remembering, memory, bringing back, recalling, which is a good thing. And the other is shikha, forgetfulness. A person is missing, you forget about him. Here the pasuk says, "V'nifkadata," what causes one to be remembered? Ki yipokit, because he's going to be absent. That's the idea. And the Maamar explains that this goes on Malchus, ki yipokit, because she is absent, she is lacking. Therefore, v'nifkadata, she is remembered. And if you hear Friday, the Maamar told us 3 madreges in v'nifkadata ki yipokit. The first is Erev Reish Chodesh, the second is Reish Chodesh itself, and the third is Reish Chodesh Lo Asad Lavi. 3 madregas. The first madrega is tomorrow is Reish Chodesh, Mochor Chodesh. V'nifkadata, you're going to be remembered today, ki yipokei, because you're missing today. In other words, Erev Reish Chodesh there is no moon, and v'nifkadata means that the Eibishter gives a koyach to the non-moon to want to shine. V'nifkadata, the Eibishter inspires the moon that today is not shining, that ki yipokei, that it should be aware that it's not shining and it should wish to shine. This is the first v'nifkadata. The second is Reish Chodesh. V'nifkadata, you're going to be made to shine ki yipokei, because you became aware that you weren't shining. In other words, since yesterday, Mochor Chodesh, Erev Reish Chodesh, the moon was made aware of its lack of light and encouraged to want to shine. On Reish Chodesh, you have a second time, v'nifkadata, you're going to be made to shine ki yipokei, because you noticed that you were not shining. And the third madrega is v'nifkadata means you're going to produce your own light. Not you're going to reflect the light of the sun, but you're going to reflect the light of the moon itself. Ki yipokei, because this is the deepest madrega of bittul possible. So in our Maamar, we read the same words 3 times over. Erev Reish Chodesh, and in Mashiach. It also loved. And the Rebbe connected it to 3 ideas. Yitzchak ben Avraham. Avraham held this Yitzchak, and then a second time, Yitzchak ben Avraham. This is a summary, a quite brief summary, if you will, of Friday's Maamar. Now we learned the beginning and the end, and it's 1 question and 1 answer. That's all it is. Ein Frage und ein Tshuva. The profundity of this question and answer is enhanced by Friday's conversation. But what we're learning today is mamish 1 question and 1 answer. So what do we need to take from Friday to give meaning to today's class? What we need to take from Friday to give meaning to today's class is the following. That there is something called Malchus. Malchus is the feminine aspect, the makabel, the woman, the Jew in relationship to the Eibush. I don't know if you remember how the end of the Maamar, the Rebbe discussed the idea of Yidden being mashpia in the Eibush, that how nervous that made us all, yeah? That's makabel. Her strength is bittul. The bittul, on one level, opens her up to receive lights, and even higher lights than the mashpia, because Allah is higher than Amshach, as we looked in the Maamar on Friday. But ultimately, the greatest thing is when the bittul itself shines. When Malchus shines its own light, not it's reflecting the light of the sun, the light is receiving from an alternative source, from a source outside of itself, but reveals its own essence, so to speak. That's what the Maamar teaches us, that Malchus is bittul. Save kol save, bittul reaches atzmas mamish, and la'asid lave, the bittul itself will shine. The following language is not in our Maamar. What I'm about to say doesn't say in our Maamar, but it's brought in many other Maamarim of the Rebbe. It's based on the Ayin Beis. There's 2 madregas. And you've heard this from me before if you've been here, because as I've told you 100 times, I have no new material. I just recycle it and I rely on forgetfulness. It used to be your forgetfulness, now it's my forgetfulness. I can say it's for 2 days in a row, it's a good. A big gesund, yeah? The first madrega is Hafichas Cheshech HaTzimtzum L'Gilu. Hashem made a tzimtzum, and the tzimtzum is a darkness. Hafichas, to transform Cheshech, the darkness, HaTzimtzum, of the tzimtzum L'Gilu, that it should shine. This means that in the Mochor, in this place of darkness, light should penetrate. And it shouldn't destroy the world, but it should fill the world. The higher Lashon is, the higher Madrega is, HaChoshech Atzmei Yoyer, that the darkness itself should shine. The difference in the first level and the second level, Hafichas Cheshech HaTzimtzum L'Gilui, and Cheshech Atzmei Yoyer is whether the moon is revealed in the light of the sun or the moon is revealed in the light of its own. And the ultimate idea of this Maamar is that save kol save, the moon is shining its own light. And the light of the moon is a different kind of light. It's not an erameh, it's not a visible light. It's an atzmiyazdika light. It's an light which has to do with the level of essence, which we're not going to discuss, not going to attempt to understand and explain, but this is the language. Now, once we have the heart of the Maamar, and the heart of the Maamar, as I said, reveals the idea that the makabel, the moon, the nekeva, has the mailas habitl, and save kol save, the revelation that she produces is not how because of a bittul she's reflecting somebody else's light, but she's revealed the light of bittul itself. Let us now learn the beginning and the end of the Maamar. Vayomer Yehonasan Mochor Chodesh. David HaMelech has a blood friend. A blood friend. The Mishnah says, Ahava she'ein tluya b'David. You want to know what means unconditional love? It's Ahavas David v'Yehonasan. Yehonasan was Shaul HaMelech's crown prince, which meant that David HaMelech's existence threatened him directly. Literally. More than it threatened Shaul. Shaul was already the king. And Yehonasan knew it very well. And yet he was so, they made a vow, an oath of friendship, which is unbreakable, that Yehonasan and David would be loyal to each other no matter what. Yehonasan knows that his own father, Shaul, wants to kill David. And David HaMelech, who was of course Shaul's son-in-law, also has a pretty good idea that Shaul wants to kill David, but they're not 100% sure yet. So Yehonasan says to David, there's a chayt, Maamar Chodesh, Mochor Chodesh. And when you have Reish Chodesh, you have a Sudas Reish Chodesh, and it looks like the Sudas Reish Chodesh was a carbon, although it's hard to interpret and figure out for sure. Because one of the ideas which the Pasuk mentions is that a person who's tamei, that David HaMelech may not come to the feast because he's tamei. A tamei was not allowed to participate in the feast of the Chodesh. So nicht kalam, the yogiven a carbon, nicht make a carbon, but that was the din. And Yehonasan says to David, don't come, because I want to see how my father reacts to your absence. If Shaul is going to be benign, kind about it, they'll understand that they're paranoid, that they're overestimating the threat from Shaul towards David. But if Shaul reacts with anger, they're going to know that Shaul Taka wants to kill David HaMelech, and David is going to literally have to run for his life. And of course, they made each other a symbol. One of my children asked me a kasha, klotz kasha, yeah. They set up this whole game. What's the game? He takes a boy, who shoots arrows, and the Yehonasan shoots arrows, and he screams to the boy, if he tells the boy, the arrows are closer to me than where you have run, that's a sign to David that he can come. And if he tells him, the arrows are beyond you, that means David has to run. So they go out into the field, they shoot these arrows, and he tells them, the arrows are they're beyond you, which is a sin when David should run. Then the boy collects the arrows, Yehonasan sends him home, and he goes and he meets David in a hideout, and they hug and kiss and say goodbye. Now, the question is obvious. If they're going to hug and kiss and say goodbye, who needs the arrows? Who needs the lad? The whole thing doesn't make sense. Mistame Pshute Shal Mikra Shaul, Yehonasan needed a pretense to explain why he went out into the field or something like this. But the Pnimis Hanyan, there's a lot of very deep hesbait in what this means. The arrows closer, the arrows further. You have to remember the word chayk, which means an arrow, also means to divide in half. That alone makes you realize how meaningful that word is. But that's not what we're going to be talking about today. The end of the story is Yehonasan meets David, and everybody knows David's got to run for his life. And the Chassidus on this pasuk usually focuses on the first and the last pasuk. The first pasuk is tomorrow is Reish Chodesh. Mochor Chodesh, tomorrow is Reish Chodesh. V'nifkadata, my father's going to ask about you. V'ki yipoket meshevecha, because you're going to be missing. And of course, the end of the story is Yehonasan and David meet out in the field, they hug and kiss and say goodbye, and they cry. How long did they cry? Ad ki David higdil, which means literally David crying exceeded that of Yehonasan. So Chassidus explains, David Higdal, David became greater than Yehonasan. Yehonasan is Mashpia, Yud Kei Vav Nosson. David is Makabel, Malchus. So they hug and they kiss and they cry until David reaches higher than Yehonasan, which of course goes on the Yosef Love, when Malchus, when Makabel, when Nekeva is going to be higher than Zoch. That's the story. And the Tzemach Tzedek explains that David is Malchus. David is level of the Malchus, Hakelel, is the Kol Neshamas, which represents the collective of the Jewish people. The Kol Yisrael B'nai Melachim, him all of us are considered from the Madrega of Malchus, and he brings the Maamar Chazal with the children of kings. And of course, Yehonasan represents godliness, the Eibush, the Son. What does this pasuk suggest? The fact that David HaMelech seat is going to be empty, which is interpreted to mean in the Chassidish sense, bittul, because Yidden collectively, David HaMelech represents the collective of Jews, is going to be in a state of bittul, like days a year, and if they're going to be mentioned. In other words, the Eibush is going to speak, remember us again. And he says a very interesting thing. What type of things do you need to remember? The kinds of things you're likely to forget. What are you likely to forget? Nicht as wichtig is. Not so important. So v'nifkadata means that something which should not be remembered is nevertheless remembered. A yid and a shama b'guf, big deal. Yeah. V'nifkadata atzmus umhus, that forgets about us because we're so insignificant, focuses in on us and remembers us. That's the diak of this word. V'nifkadata, the Eibishter remembers the forgotten. So there's two connotations. The first is, the fact that we're forgotten means we're not that important. And the fact that we remember it is, in spite of the fact that we're naturally not important, the Eibishter remembers nevertheless. The zikareinu bechinas naila b'yesa, the notion of remembering, and of course it goes on, the Eibishter remembering Yidden is a very high madreg. And the pasuk, the Rebbe continues, this pasuk, in this maamar, is said the day before Reish Chodesh. The day before Reish Chodesh, the moon vanishes altogether. 1 moment before the moon is born anew, there is zero light from the moon, not even a point. And that's why you can have Moiled. The reason it can be a new moon is born, because the old moon vanishes altogether. By days, Mochor, Chodesh, a new moon, completely new moon. Which in Pnimiyat Sanyanim means Hamshachas Eir Chodesh, a brand new light, an original light, a distinct light. Me'ashemesh, from the sun, which goes on Elokus, the Eibishter, Yehonasan. Lil to the moon, which goes on David, Yidden, the Makabel, Shaleher B'Mikedim, which never reached them before. Ukmekeinu b'Yisrael, today Melilvana, Yidden are compared to the moon, that when Yidden have Hal Yedei HaBittel Shalahem, they achieve a Madrega of Bittel, Nimshach Bahem, Naila Yesa, they achieve, they bring forward incredibly lofty light, which is called Eir Chodesh. Mochor Chodesh, tomorrow is Chodesh, which means today there's Bittel, and therefore the Nefkabata, the Eibishter remembers. And the Rebbe continues in the next paragraph, Yesh Leimar, I wish to explain this. And the idea that we say that the day before the new moon is born, when there's total bittul, you say, Mochor, tomorrow you're going to be remembered. Why do we use the lashon remembering? When one brings forward a light which is relative to the world, skip the parenthesis please, not new. If you bring into the world a light which was originally designed by the Eibishter for the world, even if yesterday it wasn't here and today it is here, you're simply revealing a new possibility. And in this case, we're talking about a brand new light. Ve'er Chodesh. What is the meaning of new light? Ein Sof Shalamayla Mishaychas La'elam is a godly light, which is altogether beyond the world. And that's the meaning of the word Vinifkad, the 4 lines on the bottom of the page. The notion of being remembered here is Be'ein Sof, a level in godliness, Shalamayla Mishaychas La'elam is altogether beyond the world. And we don't have time for the Kabbalah. There's a lot of madregas in Ein Sof. Any madrega of Ein Sof, which directly or indirectly has a connection to the world, is not Chodesh. Chodesh means a light which has absolute, the whole sugi in Chassidus, Eir Chodesh, I'll see in We don't say it in Davening. Right? You don't even know what I'm talking about, right? Ein Chodesh al tziyah in Terev v'niskech ulana b'meheira liyedei. It's at the end of the first bracha of Yetzer HaMeides, right? We don't say Ein Chodesh. Before Yetzer HaMeides, the first of the Birchas Krishma, we don't say Ein Chodesh, but the Chassidus say Shtunim Ein Chodesh. Ein Chodesh means a light which is new. New means to say, not it's new to you or to me, it's new to the Yebishter, so to speak. So the idea of Zikaron, Hashem remembering, is bringing forward our Ein Chodesh, an absolutely new light. And the Rebbe says we connect it to memory. Why? 3 lines from the bottom. The Kmei Sheva Adam, we talk about a person. Inyan HaZikaron Ein Shayach. When can you speak of a person remembering? Ela b'davar she'einei nechsha b'einav. Something which is not important. You can only remember something you can forget. What do you forget? The unimportant. When you say that the Eibishter should remember is very significant. But what is the Eibishter remembering? The forgotten. The Inyan HaZikaron, the notion of the Eibishter remembering, is be'erein tzav shalamayla mishaychas ha'elam, is a level of godliness altogether from the worlds. And therefore, relatively speaking, the world is the kul lakamek lachashiv. The world is for nothing. So when you say Hashem remembers, you're saying 2 things. First of all, it's coming from a very high level. Second of all, it's coming to that level where forgetfulness is apropos, is possible, which is the lowest madrega. And the Chodesh is the Chiddush that Hashem should pay attention to this that doesn't deserve that He pay attention to. V'nifkadata, Hashem remembers us. And the Rebbe says, V'zeu v'nifkadata ki yipoket meishavecha. Hashem remembers because of our bittul. The Hamshach has turned to page Chavdalet now. Just turn over your sheet. Ha'er shalamayla mishaychas la'elam is bringing down this incredible light. Is dafka yedei ha'bittul. It's achieved through the idea of bittul. Yipoket meishavecha. Bittul. The Rebbe explains second line from the top of page Chavdalet. The Kishavid, that's Adam Shurim HaMetzias Shalei. When a Jew serves God Almighty with his own form, with his own ego, even if it is Metzias the Gedusha, a holy form, the level of light which can be brought forward through serving Hashem with your form is mibechinas eira shayach le'elam, is Metzias, a limited light. Is to bring a light down, which is altogether removed from the worlds. The kulak make that relatively speaking to the world, this light says you are nothing. Says the Rebbe, the abitl yipoket. The Yid has bitl, he brings down a light which naturally doesn't even bother remembering the Jew. This is the word. So what's the Rebbe saying? You want atzmus, have bitl. That's a simple language. And in Sif Beis, the Rebbe goes into a long discussion, a very, very basic, classic discussion. Everybody knows the language of isarusa de latata, isarusa de layema. Isarusa means an arousal, a hisedus. Isarusa de latata means an arousal that comes from us. Isarusa de layema means an arousal that comes from the Eibishter. So you have a look at the Torah in Chodesh, right? He brings it down. He brings it from Shir Hashirim here, actually. 3 madregas. Number 1, before a Jew does anything, the Eibishter gives him a freebie. Before you do anything, the Eibishter gives you a matana. This is called the Sarusa de Liela Shalamayla. A gift. If you wake up in the morning, for a split second, the Eibishter gives you a Seder that has many names. The bottom line is an awakening in the morning which is free. Fine. Whatever level that is, our Maamar doesn't really address this level, and it's a bit of a problem, but we're not going to go there. The second level is, after the Eibishter give you a freebie, you do something. What you do is called the Sarusa de Latata, an arousal from below. And as a consequence of this Esarusa Latata, you get a second Esarusa Latata, another arousal from above. But the second arousal from above is proportionate. You invested so much, you get in return. It's tit for tat. It's equal and opposite. You get from the Eibishter as much as you give him. Like it says in Chassidus, the mashal for this is that you cannot bring down from the Eibishter higher than your own source. They bring a mashal gashmi, I don't have time to explain it, but it's a Rusa Tata me, so that means you get what you deserve. If you get what you deserve, on the one hand it's deserved, which is a good thing. On the other hand, it's limited, which may not be such a good thing. And then you have a third madrega. The third madrega is called matana. What's a matana? A matana is like a bonus. You deserve a bonus. If you're an employee and your boss gives you at the end of the year a bonus, you have a right to demand a bonus. Say, I deserve it, give me. The definition of a bonus is that it's not in your contract. It's kumdinish. It's a gift, in effect. But on the other hand, you don't just go out handing out bonuses, because then you cheapen the whole purpose. You give bonuses to the favored employees, those who work the best. So if you worked your hardest, you went the extra mile for the company, so to speak, you get your salary, that's called the Serusa Delatata, Serusa Delayela. And above that you get the Serusa Delatata Shalamaylo, Serusa Delayela, which is called the Matana. You deserve it indirectly. You deserve it. You went extra hard, you get a Matana. What's the Nim Shalamaylo? The Nim Shalamaylo is, it says in Tanya Perek on the basis, but from Zayah, Kuchabrichu Sharia Basar Shlim. When a person achieves Shlemus, which means you go as far as you can go, there's no room to go. The example, of course, is Avraham Avinu. So, as you climb the ladder of Avodah, you get a proportionate to what you give. When you reach a plateau, when you reach a certain shleimus, Hashem gives you a gift. This gift is deserved indirect, an indirect earning. So if you think about it, you have three levels. The freebie that you get for free in the morning, the earned reward, which is absolutely earned, it's proportionate to my investment, and what's earned indirectly as a matoni. Now here comes the question. The idea that when Yid has bittul, he gets a chodesh. Through bittul he gets a light which says the world is nothing, not worth remembering. Is that level 1, level 2, or level 3? Is it the freebie Yisrusa D'Liela? Is it the earned and deserved Yisrusa D'Liela? Or is it the Yisrusa D'Liela which is earned indirectly? I'll save you the time. I'll tell you the answer. The answer is it's higher than all three. Wow. It's a fourth level. The idea that he is bittul gives him v'nifkadat that the Eibusha should remember him. And as the Rebbe says, what does it mean to remember? The kind of thing that the Eibusha forgets because it's unimportant. The says a madrega velakus, which is called Eir Chodesh, nothing to do with the world whatsoever, is introduced to the world because of this bittul, is a fourth madrega. And the question that our Maamar has is, how could a person possibly reach the Eibusha? As it is, we don't understand what it means. I do something and the Eibusha gives me something back. How is it possible that a Yid through bittul should read Atzmas and Hus? So you look on page Chaf Dalet, the last paragraph, please. V'yashleima shahagilui de v'nifkadata. The idea that the Eibusha remembers us because of bittul is naile yeser gam, is higher even than the third level. Notice I put the gimel there. You achieve a plateau. You achieve a shleim. And because you achieve a shleim, you get not just what you deserve, but even more. Pocket is even more than that. The fact that you achieve the shleimus and a plateau, skip the parenthesis, is clearly gives you a reward by way of gift. In other words, when you get a bonus, so to speak, the very fact that you earned a bonus, at least indirectly, shows even though you don't deserve it, you can't collect it in a court of law. The fact that you can earn this bonus by going the extra mile shows that indirectly it's proportionate to you. Says the Rebbe, when you're talking about godliness, which is completely removed from the world, which we called before Eir Chodesh, that relative to it, Kula make lach the world is nothing, says the Rebbe, Ein Shayach Lema, it's impossible to say. Shahashleimus de Maisa Tachtenim, that a human being should achieve a wholeness in his avodah, and as a consequence is a mokin muchsher lahagila de'intar. He should be able to receive this life. You see, when the Eibusha gives you something that you don't deserve at all, what's the idea that you don't deserve at all? That he has to remember you, because naturally you're going to forget. For that, there's no way you can make a kelim. Not through earning, not through earning indirectly. It's still atmos. Says the Rebbe. Second line from the bottom of page Chaf Dalet ve'inyan hazikaron, and nevertheless, when it comes Reish Chodesh, and we speak about the birth of a new moon, and we describe it as Eibusha remembering, this means that be'darja de'ein sof, this level of godliness, to whom shekulach leikalach, the whole world is nothing, v'dugmas inyan hazikaron, that you remember the things that you forget, is brought into the world through bit. In other words, what the Rebbe is observing is, we all understand the tit for tat. You give and you get, you give and you get, you give and you get. Here is a case of give and get which doesn't make any sense. How could a human being get something which has nothing to do with him? We understand the steps. You give a little, you get a little. You give more, you get more. You give everything, you get more than everything. All of that is reasonable. But the notion that bittul somehow gets you a level of godliness to whom you are non-existent doesn't make any sense. Sif Gimel, top of page Chafei. I don't understand. On the level of godliness, to whom the world is nothing. Our bittul is also nothing. If I am nothing, my bittul is nothing. How is it possible that the bittul of a person should arouse in the Eibishter on memory? If we're nothing, our bittul is nothing, so how does our bittul, which is nothing, arouse in Atzmos as a curtain for us? And the Rebbe explains the question, and I don't have time to explain it, but the Nekud he brings out is that even the idea of getting a gift, when you get a gift, a bonus, which is earned indirectly, you only earn it because the Eibishter chooses to give it to you. If he doesn't want to give it to you, you don't get it. In other words, even the third is Tanusa de L'Yelech because of the Eibishter. Here we're dealing with a fourth. Bittul touches the Eibishter and such a madrege that he remembers you. In other words, the level with the world and our bittul is nothing. He remembers. The Rebbe says, I don't understand how this is possible. In short, and in summary, and in repetition, if we speak about a relationship, the relationship between creation and creator is only those levels of godliness which have a relationship with the creation. And the highest levels of godliness which have a relationship with the creation are only involved in creation because the Eibishter chooses they should be involved. Here we're saying that the level of godliness which is altogether beyond creation also has an involvement in creation. How? Through our effort of bittul. The Rebbe says, I don't understand it. And the answer is on page Lamed, page Choftes, I'm sorry. Now what happened between the question and the answer? In one word that happened, the question and the answer is called Friday morning. If you hear Friday morning, you know what happened. Right? But I told you before the Nekud. In the Makabah, in the world, there is bittul. And Seif Kol Seif, this bittul on the deepest levels, does not affect that because of the bittul we're revealing the light of the sun, the light of godliness, but you're revealing the light of the bittul itself. And the light of the bittul itself is greater than, in other words, the light of the moon itself is greater than any light the sun is going to give it. What does that mean? Let's read it in time. Vizehu, I am 5 lines from the top of page Choftes, where I made my Yud Aleph. You're going to be remembered because there's going to be a bittul. Says the Rebbe, the Hagam, Shinyan as a cardinal, although we're describing this memory as being. A level of godliness to which the worlds are nothing. Says the Rebbe, it is still true that Habitul, the Yisrael, the Yiddish Habitul, Yipoket Meshavecha, Me'eir Bedargezu, should cause that even on this level, the level of godliness, whom the world is nothing, responds to Yiddish Habitul. Key, and here's the rule. The rule that we established in the beginning of the mind, to arouse the heavens through our efforts. By a person arousing it. If I can touch the heavens to get the heavens to respond, that means the heavens value me. Says the Rebbe, that's true when you're trying to touch the heavens with your own ego. No mitzias. But when you're not trying to touch the heavens, to the contrary, you're saying that you're nothing in the truest sense of the word. Then mizgale in yonem ha'elyon d'Yisrael. This is the true mile of Yidden. So what's the answer? What changed from the question to the answer? The question was, how could bittul reach Atzmos? If you're nothing, your bittul is also nothing. And the answer is, you see, when you become totally bottled, you don't become nothing. You reveal how you're one with the Eibishter. Just like in the case of the moon, the greater the bittul of the moon doesn't only result in a greater revelation of sunlight across the moon, but that the moon is made Eir Atzmi. This is the chiddush, this is the difference between how the Maamar began, which was the question. If I can't earn matana, how can I earn Atzmos Eir Chodesh? And the answer is, you're not earning Eir Chodesh. You're showing through your bittul the truth of you, which is the Eibishter. When you show the truth of you, which is the Eibishter, you have a relationship to all the levels that you have no relationship with, even the madrega of Eir Chodesh. So in the beginning of the Maamar, we saw the bittul as a keli. And bittul I'm going to get. At the end of the Maamar, we're not seeing the bittul as a keli. We're seeing the bittul as revealing the truth of the person. And when the bittul reveals the truth of the person, that is Atzmos Amunus. And the Rebbe finishes, I'm going to leave it alone, he finishes by speaking about a new Torah, and a new creation, a new Yidden. And he says, but I want you to know, there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, a new Torah, new Neshamas Yisrael. But then it says, this is a very interesting idea. It's the last pasuk in Yeshaya. Yamei Zarachem V'Shimcha means the things that we do in this world will be significant even in a world which is altogether new. There's a new Torah, there's a new mitzvahs. Not chas v'sham different mitzvahs, but new mitzvahs. New neshamas, a naya welt. Zarachem V'Shimcha, the seeds which we plant today. And the name which we created for ourselves to avoid it today is going to be significant even then. How could that be? And the answer is because the zera and the shape of Yidden is their bittul. And their bittul reveals how they're one with the Eibishter. One is with the Eibishter is the Chodesh itself. And the Rebbe concludes the Yehonasan, it should be the will of God Almighty, by having these conversations, especially on Shabbos Mevorchim, and particularly that it's Erev Chodesh, Mochor, Chodesh, Yemah, Yezaras should hasten. Agil, David, Malcham Mashiach, the revelation, David, Malcham Mashiach. David, Melchus, Alchai, Vakayim, Yov, Vigalen, Vidachem, Yisad, Seinu, Vigula, Mites, Vashlema. Okay, now let's admit, Friday was harder. This was sweet. Okay.